You're listening to Keith Engle, the host of TGI Sports Talk on the National Streaming Sports Roku channel.
Good morning. Good morning. We've been out of nights in a while. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Keith Engle here for TGI Sports Talk. College football huddle. I'm going to change this banner while we're talking about it. We'll change it in a second. We haven't been on, and hopefully we're back and better than ever. We took our little July hiatus, which we normally take. But now things are starting to heat up, and we're getting into some college football talk tonight. We'll talk some top 25 preseason top. Whoa, what did I do there? Top 25 is out for at least I like to use the AP poll, but the coaches poll is the only one really out with an updated an updated ranking. We'll get a little bit into some of those teams, who's underrated, who's overrated, who should be ranked, who shouldn't be ranked. We'll talk about the Michigan situation. We'll talk about the Georgia situation. A comparison was made to me the other day about that. We'll get into that. We'll look at some coaches on the hot seat. Some big early games coming up. And we want to welcome everybody watching tonight on the Let's Talk Sports. Let's Talk Sports. I'm TGI Sports Talk. Let's Talk Sports in my brain for some reason. TGI Sports Talk's platforms on Facebook, YouTube. You'll see us on Twitter later. You'll catch us on Roku. This show will be repeated tomorrow at 6 p.m. and at 9 a.m. Saturdays going forward. And also, you'll catch me in my personal Facebook page as well. And we'll show up on Twitter and with all the college football groups that are great backers of the show, and as well as groups like Bottom Line Sports with Flo and the gang over there, and John Gonzalez, the Sports Authorities. Quick shout out to Ralph Williams at RW Media. He does some great stuff, including, or not the least of which, I guess, is the Sports Corner with Smoke and Jim Frazier every Tuesday from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern. You can catch him on Facebook and YouTube. Probably Twitter. Sorry, is it X or Twitter? Quick thank you to Mike Bass, we're going to talk about the Wolverines here in a little bit. Former great Michigan Wolverine, Mike Bass, who also played with the Redskins, very famous for returning an Eric Garcia premium pass in the Super Bowl for a touchdown in 1972. And this week we'll have Brian McCray, former Major League outfielder, solid player, played with the Mets, the Cubs, the Royals. He played for his dad. He came up with the Royals and the Rockies, among some others. And we welcome you into, again, not our debut show, but we're back and hopefully better than ever as we've been off for a few weeks with our normal summer hiatus. Let me get this music off of here. I can't seem to get where I want to go. You ever have those days you just can't get where you want to go? All the time, right? Let me fix this banner while we don't have anybody in here with us. But I want to get into your comments, and I did screw up and made the show, the promo for the show said 7 a.m., which is brilliant since obviously it's not 7 a.m., it's 7 p.m. So we'll fix that for next week. So apologize for any inconveniences. Anybody who misses the show live, remember we're on, and I guess Keith needs to remember as well, we are on live Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. with the show. You can catch it in playbacks on my Facebook page and other areas as well. College football, as we said, is right around the corner. I mean, where are we? Looking at the schedule, we get started with week 0 on the 24th of August. That is only a short 17 days away. We'll talk about all the things that are fit to be talked about today. I didn't put my banner back up. We'll get into your topics as always. And again, it takes us a few weeks to start building this audience back. So it'll be a lot of me probably rattling on here this week and maybe next week. But as the games get closer to starting and do start, the live audience picks up and the comments will pick up. We'll get Larry Sorensen in here in a few weeks, Jim Behringer probably to give his opinions on what we'll be seeing going forward before the season gets started. And, we'll dive into all of that. The big news of the day in the NCAA, more, I don't know. So Michigan was sanctioned. Michigan wasn't sanctioned. Jim Harbaugh got show cause order. He's not in the NCAA anymore, so it's easy to put him on the list. But his unethical conduct, just so you're aware, was only in regards to the recruiting, the COVID recruiting violations, supposed. Again, nonsense. Sherrod Moore and another coach. What were their names? Hold on a second. What was the other coach's name that got named? Sherrod Moore, supposedly, again. I don't doubt these things. Again, people misconstrue that that I'm not defending what Michigan did or didn't do. But again, most teams are doing these types of things. So Sherrod Moore supposedly was deleting messages, probably back and forth between him and oh God, now I'm having trouble remembering everybody's name. Oh God, it'll come to me. Anyway, him and Coach Partridge were both sanctioned. Not sanctioned. Nothing's happened that I'm aware of. I don't know if any consequences will come of this. I mean, the NCAA has shied away from postseason bans before. They can't take away their national title because the NCAA has nothing to do with the playoff system and the naming of a national champion, and never has. Right? That's what people forget. The NCAA doesn't name national champions. In the past, sports writers and coaching polls named national championships. There was a BCS championship series that was totally separate from the NCAA. The college football playoff we have now, totally different from the NCAA. So, and to be honest with you, I don't even know. They can be banned from postseason play by the NCAA, but they can't take away championships. I'm sure if they try to ban them, that the college playoff might even take them to court. But, and you have this against, and here's the thing, Rick Sherlock, I don't know if Rick's with us. Yes, Rick's with us. Glad to be back, Rick. We had a great July off. I did miss being here, but, hopefully we'll be back. And as I said, the audience is going to grow and grow and grow as we get through this August and get the games going. And unfortunately, we'll talk about the polls here in a second. We'll talk a little bit about some coaches. And I want to start with the Michigan issues and kind of compare, because Rick, you brought up, and thank you, James. Good to have you with us today. We're struggling a little bit with getting ourselves back into groove here on a Wednesday night. CA's with us. Good to have you with us. I want to talk a little bit to get started, and we can jump around a little bit, but so that we know what the Michigan allegations are, right? The sanctions, the show cause is what they can't. And that's about Jim Harbaugh wants to come back to college football. He'll pay a penalty. Otherwise, he's gotten away with whatever he did in recruiting and also in the fine stealing. There still could be penalties against Michigan. The NCAA has shied away from penalizing players. So maybe Sherrod Moore will pay some kind of price for this. But you just juxtapose this against what's going on in Georgia, where there's been a rash of instances in the last year, 2 years. And again, I'm not. Kirby Smart's a great coach. I'm not trying to say Georgia's more right or more wrong. Rick, and maybe rightly so, called me out a little bit. A little this week in a tech, and I don't think I'm not trying to throw you under the bus here at all, Rick. I mean, I think it was after the show or during the week or whenever it was, Sunday or Monday, probably Monday after the news came out. I mean, I don't think you really can compare these two situations. I mean, which one is really more important? in the grand scheme of life, let's say. Now, grand scheme of college football, I guess what Michigan's doing certainly has a great effect. If they're stealing signs, which again, everybody does, we know this. We just decide not to address it. And if the NCAA wants to get you for recruiting violations or stealing signs or whatever it might be for on-field violations, they're going to get you. Off the field, I think it's probably still the same thing. But is what happened in Michigan, in the grand scheme of things, worse than what's going on in Georgia right now? And listen, I've said I haven't necessarily come down hard on Kirby Smart because I've said it's very hard to police what players do off the field. But if these things keep coming up, you've got to wonder about the institutional control that goes on. And I see your point there. Well, that's a good point, Rick, actually. Let me put this up here. And it's all, I said this in the beginning. It's never the crime. It's the cover-up that gets you, right? I mean, Richard Nixon didn't resign because of Watergate. He resigned because of the cover-up. I've used that all the time as a barometer. But again, these are still on the field violations. So again, which is worse? I'm not saying I know. I'm really not saying I know. But I'm not willing to sit here and say what happened at Michigan is worse than the situation at Georgia right now. Something's amiss. And again, when it comes to policing players off the field and when they're not on your practice field or game day, again, especially today, I don't know how you rein them in, but you can, especially this last instance. I mean, there was obviously some red flags before they brought this kid into the program because there were some issues at Ole Miss before he transferred to Georgia. So you got to be more aware of these things. And listen, I do not think something should happen to Kirby Smart. I'm not saying that at all. My point to Rick the other night was, and by the way, CA is backing you up here, which is fine. My point to Rick was, and it's been here all along. My point has always been here, and I think it gets lost, that when they want you, they'll get you for something. Jim Harbaugh was a polarizing figure, not liked in a lot of quarters of the NCAA or the Big Ten or anywhere, maybe in college football other than Ann Arbor. And the NCAA decided they wanted him, and they got him. They didn't get him for much. And it remains to be seen what will happen to Michigan. And Kirby Smart's not there. Kirby Smart's been kind of the fair-haired boy. Kirby Smart is at the top of the hill in Georgia, as they should be. He is the best coach in college football today. Got a long ways to go to be the best coach ever, but he's the best coach in football today. And the NCAA is going to turn their head to that type of thing. They're not going to look any deeper than they have to. But someday, somebody might want Kirby Smart, and then he better watch his back because they'll get him, whether it's this or something else. So anyway, is this similar to Pete Carroll again, Pete Carroll was charged, and a lot of coaches, Art Briles, on a much more serious level. And Pete Carroll's not a bad comparison, James, because institutional control, that's the thing where, like, there's just a lot of stuff going on, and you don't have control or handle on the organization. You can't say that about Jim Harbaugh unless he didn't know that his coaches were doing something. Then I guess you could say he had a lack of institutional control. Art Briles at Baylor might be the best comparison. And again, I'm not saying that the transgressions at Georgia have reached the level of what was going on at Baylor, but that's what you get when you keep letting things slide. You get into those situations. I don't want to bash. I really don't want to bash Kirby Smart. I'm not trying to. I'm only just comparing the two situations because to me, I mean, we're comparing apples to oranges, number one. When you're talking about what's happening at Georgia and what's happening and happened at Michigan. We're comparing apples and oranges. It's not the same situation, not even close to the same issues. I mean, Michigan theoretically was affecting games. This won't be affecting games. They'll see if Kirby Smart, now he kicked the kid off the field or off the team who had another driving offense here a few weeks ago or a month ago. But this most recent instance where there's family abuse going on, is that the term that they use? Let me see if I can find what I was looking for here. Yeah, no, I don't see it, of course. But family abuse is a general term. It's not affecting. He's projected to be a starter. What Kirby does here could be very interesting. And again, I'm not saying that Kirby's a bad guy. I don't want anybody to think that. I don't. I think he's a great coach, and I think he's probably a good role, because you're out there to win football games, but you're also molding young men to go on in life. That's what a coach does, right? I'm under no illusions that he's getting $12 million a year to make these guys great human beings, but that should be part of the mandate. Jim Behringer's with us. Great to have you with us. We'll have Jim on the show here in the coming weeks. Promise. Heard last year that Harbaugh was going to be suspended for a year if he'd stayed, and I'm sure you heard. Again, that's probably about right. He would be sanctioned if he was still in college football. He's likely never going back to college football, so the sanctions are irrelevant as far as Harbaugh is concerned. And again, to me, the recruiting violations, as Rick said, it's not the violations, it's the cover-up. And nobody ever learns that lesson. Just come clean. If you come clean, you're much better off. Just take your punishment and move on. But the sign stealing scandal will lead to more from what Jim is told. Again, maybe so. I don't think it should. I really don't. I'm never going to change my argument on this. And again, people misconstrue it to be I'm defending Michigan. I'm really not. But until everybody stops doing the same thing, why am I picking and choosing who I prosecute? It's selective prosecution. It's what it is. So, I don't know. When Rick says when his son played football, the coach called to make sure you were in on game night. What you did after was wide open. Well, again, as I said, I understand. Coaches can only be so many places at one time. And some of the stuff that's gone on with Georgia, while disturbing, I'm not going to pin it specifically on Kirby. Some people at some point will, especially the better you get and the more you win, the more people want to knock you off your pedestal. Right? It's just that's human nature. That's the world we live in. So I mean, even if you had coaches, doing bed check for these guys, the tragic accident with the female staffer and the player who were killed a couple of years ago. Again, it isn't like you can stop all of this stuff. But now when you start bringing in bad acts like this kid that they brought in, I'm trying to find his name here because I've lost track of him. Where is this story? I know it's here somewhere. Maybe Rick can help me out here. Well, there you go. So I guess my so I guess my story is that they dismissed wide receiver Ryra Thomas in the aftermath of his second arrest for domestic violence. I think this is the kid who wasn't expected to play, though. Nope, I take that back. Less than a month after his arrival, an incident with his girlfriend at the dorm led to his arrest and charges of false imprisonment. So I will change my tune now. Kirby Smart has shown that he is consistent in these areas, and he has released Ryra Thomas, as he did the player who had the driving issues here a few weeks ago. So, again, kudos to Kirby. He cut a guy a few weeks ago who was not expected to play, and now he cuts a guy who was expected to have a pretty large role with Georgia. Now, they're very deep at wide receiver, from what I understand. I know they got a kid from Miami, Young, I believe is his last name. And I know they're probably deeper than hell at wide receiver. So in the grand scheme, maybe this doesn't mean anything. But showing this consistency, again, is important, I think, for Kirby Smart in these areas. Now, I think he should probably do a little more due diligence before you bring in some of these guys would probably be a good idea. Before you run into, you don't want things to slide and it become a Baylor situation. I think this was always the year he was bailing to the NFL. Raspberries and blueberries. CA's got a good point. I mean, I am being a bit cliche when I use apples and oranges. Curbside getting smarter. Anyway. By the way, we're going to get into this top 25 real quick. And I would love to get your guys' opinion. We'll go through this very quickly. This is the coaches poll. During the season, I will be consistent. I always use the AP poll when we do the rankings and such. But they don't have a recent poll out, so I want to use the CFA poll. FCA poll. Georgia, number one with 46 first place votes. I don't think I can argue that. And I want to talk about overrated and underrated. Hello, Jay. We got here with us. Jay the Maker is with us tonight. Good to have you with us, Jay. Let us know where you're. I don't remember you being on, Jay. If you have, I apologize. Let us know where you're from and who your team is in college football. Remember, we're back to college football. Georgia, I don't think we'll get any arguments. Number one team in the nation. I mean, what do they have in the last 4 years? 2 losses. I mean, and they're still loaded. They still got Carson Beck, who's obviously a Heisman Trophy candidate. They lose Bauer, but I think they've got a kid lined up to take his place who filled in admirably, I believe, when at least I think, when Bauer was hurt last year. They've got wide receivers. This is a team that just reloads. And that's kudos to Kirby Smart. Ohio State at number 2. There's no coach in the country with more pressure on them than Ryan Day. Ryan Day, number 1, better be Michigan. And this is a good year to do it because who knows what's going to happen with the sanctions. And plus, they've lost a ton. They lost their coach. They lost their starting quarterback. They lost their starting running back. They've lost tons across this team. Now, Ohio State went out and spent a lot of money bringing in players, and Ryan Day had better produce. So beat Michigan, and you better be in a national championship game, maybe even win a national championship game, or I'd be a little worried about my job security. Oregon, everybody's talking up Oregon in their first year in the Big Ten. A lot. You look at some of the computer projections, and a lot of them have them coming out into the championship final, winning the Big Ten and advancing to at least the national championship game, if not winning it. Texas gets a first place vote at number 4. I think Texas is fine. I think you're going to see. I think there's still a chance you could see Arch Manning step up and wrestle this job away from Ewers if everything breaks right. If Ewers struggles a bit, Arch Manning lit up spring. The spring practice is the spring game. Cam Ewers is still the number 1 quarterback. Don't misunderstand. But Arch Manning stayed for a reason, and I wouldn't be surprised you see him play more this year, and you see a bit of a early on in the season, you may find out who's the hotter quarterback, and that may be who plays heading into their first year at SEC play. It's going to be very interesting. You know, it's a different world for Texas and Oklahoma. No disrespect to the Big 12. I like the Big 12. It's a very entertaining conference still this year, but they don't play anywhere near the level of the SEC. That ought to make my SEC elitist people happy. John Lalonde is not here tonight, at least so far. Probably take him a little while to realize we're back, and hopefully better than ever. Alabama at number 5 with their new coach, Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer is a very capable coach. Couple of horns up, reloads to catch the wide receiver tight end, looking great. And good evening, Dave Guyette. Dave Guyette, big Syracuse fan. And when it comes to college sports, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me if I'm wrong, David. Alabama and Kalen DeBoer. I love Kalen DeBoer. I think he's a great coach. It's a tough situation. The guy who follows the guy has got so much pressure on him. I think there'll be a honeymoon period here. I think Alabama struggles this year. I think they're overrated at number 5. This is my first overrated. I'm okay probably with the first 4. I think Texas. I think I'd put Notre Dame in this spot instead of Texas. I know, Rick, you don't love Marcus Freeman. I think Marcus Freeman has made great progress as a head coach the last 2 years. I think Riley Leonard coming in there, if he stays healthy, makes this a potentially dynamic offense, which is not something Notre Dame has had especially for Marcus Freeman's first couple of years. Even with Sam Hartman there last year, they struggled a lot to move the football and put the ball in the end zone. Riley Leonard can do it all if he's healthy. Big caveat, I know. Got to be on a field to do well. Alabama lost a lot. It was a pretty good spring transfer portal for DeBoer and the Tide, but I see this team potentially missing out on a playoff bid. Maybe squeaking in, but it'll be a bit of a down year for Alabama. I think Caleb DeBoer has what it takes to be the guy who replaces the guy. Remember, when Alabama tried to replace the guy the last time, Bear Bryant, it took 2006. It took at least 2 decades and about 7 coaches, six or seven coaches. Now, Gene Stallings won a national championship in the middle there, but there was a lot of bad seasons with Dennis Francione, with Shula, with Perkins, Curry. Yeah, not a lot of great. Mike Price never even made it to the field. Ole Miss at number 6. I don't think that's an overrated. I know a lot of people are probably going to think they are, but Lane Kiffin is the king of the transfer portal. He's got tons of talent coming in there. The defense is going to be better. Jackson Dart is now going to have a 3rd year under his belt. To be his 3rd year as a starter. Played very well last year. Lane Kiffin's got to beat Alabama, got to beat Georgia. He can't get over that hump. I think Mississippi's a no doubt playoff. Definitely going to be in the playoff. Notre Dame, I feel the same way. They're in the little tougher road for them. By the way, they cannot get one of those top 4 seeds. They're going to go to the 4 power conferences. That's a big disadvantage for Notre Dame. I'm going to get to your comments in just a second. Let me finish my Notre Dame comments. I do think they're underrated at number 7. I think they're a top 5 team for all the reasons I just mentioned. The growth of Marcus Freeman as a coach. I think the start they got off to 2 years ago and the great finish they had was very helpful in his growth as a coach. Last year, I just don't think they had enough. Sam Hartman. I like Sam Hartman. We've talked about Sam Hartman a lot on this show as we have Larry Sorensen on the show a lot, who does color down at Wake Forest, where Sam Hartman set all kinds of records. But he just wasn't the guy to get him over. Riley Leonard, if he's healthy, is going to be a difference maker at Notre Dame. James says, Ohio State deserves number 2. They have reloaded. I agree 100%. Again, I'm okay. I'm all right. Oregon might have to still show me something. Dan Lanning's a great coach. But Oregon going into the Big Ten, a weakened Big Ten this year, I think this is Oregon and Ohio State battling it out. I don't see anybody else having a chance. I'm okay with the first 4 picks. Alabama's the first place I have a little issue. Ole Miss, I'm okay at 6. Notre Dame, I'm moving up. Excuse me. This is hiccup attack number 3 today. Alabama lost tons of recruits and should start out in the 20s, not in the top 25. I agree, James. As I said, I don't think Alabama. Again, I think Alabama has a chance to squeak into the playoff, maybe with an at-large bid. But I think this is going to be a work in progress. Kalen DeBoer is a great coach. This is going to be a tough year for Alabama. And when I say tough year, they might be 9. That's not a tough year. Notre Dame has a talent, but needs all 3 phases. Last year, special team, very great call, Rick. Special teams did let them down, as well as play calling. I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, the offensive coordinator has been replaced, and it's the former offensive coordinator who was there under Kelly is back calling plays. Again, to me, this season for Notre Dame hinges on the health of Riley Leonard. I think Riley Leonard is the bomb when he's healthy. He showed it at Duke. Whenever he was healthy, he played well. James is at LSU. He hates Ole Miss. I'm sure they all hate Lane Kiffin too. Would you rather, James? I don't know if I ever asked you this question because I don't think we were connected at the time that Coach Kelly got the job at LSU. There was a lot of rumors about Lane Kiffin. At that time, would you have been able to embrace Lane Kiffin as your coach? I know that John Lawn, our resident SEC elitist and fellow LSU fan for you, could not have lived with Lane Kiffin as his coach. I wonder if you could. I think Lane Kiffin's a great coach. I mean, he gets his own way sometimes. I think sometimes he wants to be the smartest guy in the room, but I think he's very, very good. With that said, James does say they deserve their number 6 ranking, and I guess CA is okay with the Ducks being ranked number 3. Let's move on. I'll tell you what. I think Michigan at 8, with 1 first place vote, by the way, is a huge overrating. And maybe that's good for Michigan to be coming in under the radar this year. But again, you lost a quarterback who was drafted in the first round, a running back who I think might have been the first running back taken. It wasn't early, but I'm pretty sure Blake Corum was if he wasn't first, I believe he was second. And he's one of the best. He was one of the best backs in college the last 3 years. Now they've got some depth in that backfield, but the quarterback play is going to make all the difference in Michigan. Keeping Sharon Moore was probably a very, very good move, as long as he can coach and something doesn't happen because of erased text messages. I've been through this a little bit before. I seem to have deja vu about, deleted text messages and phones that went missing. That's for a different sport. I think Michigan way overrated. Coming off a national championship, to be expected. You give them some props, I guess, but I would have ranked them probably with Alabama down in the 20s. Penn State at number 9. Listen, I'm going to tell you this till I'm blue in the face. Until James Franklin beats Ohio State or Michigan, I can't get behind this guy. He can't win big games. So now he's got a chance with the expanded playoffs to get in to the playoff. But I'm not sure that he can actually make that happen because, the Big Ten is down a little bit this year, and Penn State could surprise. They could get to the championship game. There's no more divisions, which is probably a good thing for the teams in the East because, or they North and South. I think they're East and West. I don't remember now. But the West was always much weaker. All the good teams were in the East. But James Franklin has yet to show me he can beat. I'm trying to find something here. I mean, his record is like, I don't know, 2-15. There it is. Sorry. That's 2-7. That's 3-17. Okay, this is a good stat too. 20 games against top-ranked opponents under Franklin. 3-17. 4-16 against Ohio State and Michigan, who were not always ranked in that top 10, by the way, during those 20 games. James Franklin's got to get it together for me to be a believer, and I hope everybody else. There's zero reason for me to have confidence that Penn State's going to be in this playoff. I did say the bomb. When's the last time you heard? Listen, I'll be 64 in 8 days. I don't know if I've ever said the bomb before. James, excellent catch. You're going to get the prize today. It's going to be this nice MDF Commerce keychain. Before you think, well, that's pretty chintzy. It's also got a lighter. It's also got a flashlight. So cost me more to send it to you than it's worth. Sorry. You'll win it. You win it, but I'm keeping it. You could have taken Lane Kiffin all day. The man knows offensive football at an elite level. God bless you, man. You know, when I hear people talk sense, I sometimes get surprised. Don't take offense, Rick and CA, Dave. But some people, again, where's John? Where's John DeLon? I don't want to talk about John DeLon when he's not here, so I won't get into it. But Lane Kiffin's a great coach. You may not like him. He's very polarizing, a little like Jim Harbaugh. But Lane Kiffin's been a winner at Mississippi pretty much. He did a great job. And everybody should thank there's a lot of guys who should thank Nick Saban for resurrecting their careers. Steve Scarsazian, Lane Kiffin, to name two. He did it for Butch Jones too, but Butch Jones is flaming out now at Arkansas State. Probably get fired this year. But Lane Kiffin's just a great coach. Let's round out the top 10 with Florida State. Obviously, Travis Jordan is gone. They've got to replace their top quarterback. They lost a lot of pieces on defense, including Varys, who played here at Albany State before he transferred to Florida State. But I think Mike Norvell's gotten over the hump. I think Mike Norvell's done a great job of building up the talent level and levels of this team, I guess you would say. Similar to what George has done with Kirby Smart, not quite to that level, obviously, but I think it's more reloading than rebuilding now. That's what you need to get to stay at an elite level. You've got to be able to reload and not rebuild. And I think Florida State, it's going to come down to, I think, quarterback play. And I'm not confident DJ, again, I will never be able to say DJ's last name, so we'll just say DJ, who started out at Clemson. And very interestingly, will play at Clemson this year. I think they travel to Clemson, and we haven't stopped to look at anybody's record yet. And one thing that we do a lot of times in these conversations is stop if we think somebody's better or worse than I think. We look at the record. In fact, I might do that with Penn State right now. Penn State, because now we're starting to get to Penn State's at number 10. And I'm going to say they're just a bit overrated because I would put Missouri. I might put Missouri. I might put Tennessee above them. I know Tennessee lost a lot in Joe Milton. I would at least put Missouri ahead of them. So I guess, I'm probably being a little too picky. Question's going to be, is the ACC going to manage to be able to get two teams into this playoff? And we'll start talking about that as we continue the conversation in the preseason and leading up and all through the season, obviously. You've got 12 spots. Four of them, for the top four seeds will go to the winners of the power conferences. And the top 5 rated conference winners will get in. automatically. Then you get 7 at-large teams. Now, we've already talked about how many teams in this top 10. You've already got Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, Alabama. 4 teams from the SEC. Are 4 teams from the SEC going to make the playoff? If so, at least 3 other bids. I see 3. Possibly they get sneak 4. Big Ten's likely going to get 2. Right? So that's going to be, let's say that's 5. 10. I got 2 spots left. Notre Dame's got 1 of them. I got 1 spot left. Is the ACC going to manage to get 2 teams in? Again, the scenarios could change. Will change. Big 12, ACC, they're going to have a hard time getting a second team in because you're going to have a team in the Big 10 who's going to surprise us and be a contender. You could have, you're going to have the winner, the highest rated group of 5 conferences. Well, I guess a group of 5, still group of 5, right? We lost a whole conference with the Pac-12 being gone. So again, I say those 4 out of the SEC, but that doesn't even take into account Missouri, LSU, who could easily replace Alabama. I don't see a world where Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss don't get in. Would the SEC take 5? Could they get 5 in? I don't see how you could do it. Miami's another team that until they win. Listen, and Jim, I don't know if you're still here, but I'm so tired of hearing about my team, the Hurricanes, being ranked without showing anything. Marco Cristobal's got to be on a hot seat. I mean, to me, he's right now he's below James Franklin on my rankings. So Florida State or Clemson or Miami, we'll look closer. NC State, all going to be contenders in the ACC. Quitters of Florida State that took the ball and went home. Again, I don't disagree with you, Rick, but the NCAA was wrong to penalize the rest of the players that stayed by not putting them in the playoff. I'll say that again. I'm not for any of these players sitting out, but until they change the rules and take back their NIL money and take back whatever they're given as professional players now, because, again, amateurism is gone. Maybe that would do it. Maybe you sign a contract with me, right? Because remember, these teams all have, outside of the NIL, these teams have all got $21 million now to spend to recruit players. And I give you whatever you want. You can use it on one player. Give them $20 million. Make them sign a contract that I'm going to stay there 4 years and I'm going to play all the games. And if you don't fulfill that, I'm taking my money back. Nobody's going to get paid $21 million, so relax. But whatever it is, $2 million. I want some kind of guaranteed, dude. I'll throw another one out there for you, James. That you're going to stick around and play. Now, maybe you only got to guarantee me 2 years, depending on how much money I give you. But part of the stipulation is going to be whenever you decide you're leaving my school, you're not sitting out bowl games. And by the way, in the 12-team playoff, I foresee much less of that, at least amongst those 12 teams. It was an epidemic last year. It was terrible. Florida State, and listen, part of this was because those kids would not have sat out if they made the playoff. Guaranteed. They didn't make the playoff because the quarterback got hurt. Shouldn't be penalizing teams that way. They still deserve to be there. Florida State overrated. I agree. I don't think a lot overrated, though. I don't know. James, I think this team has got to prove themselves, right? Because, again, I'm not a big fan of DJ. I don't think this team falls off the charts, falls out of the top 25. But I might have pushed this team down into the late teens rather than number 10 myself. I love Missouri. I think Missouri belongs there, maybe at number 10. I might even have considered LSU. You got several big players to replace, including your top 2 playmakers. So again, this team has something to prove. So I'm going to say LSU is a bit overrated. But everybody, once you get past really where we are, every one of these teams has something to prove. LSU, Utah, or it has to prove something, I think, to earn their rating. Utah at number 13, Clemson at 14. This is a big year for Dabo. They want to show that they haven't fallen off and fallen way behind the Georgias of the world without getting involved in NIL and the transfer portal hardly at all, because Dabo doesn't believe in it. You got to do something to keep up with the Joneses. Tennessee, something to prove. Oklahoma at 16. I've said it's going to be a tough year for Oklahoma. There's a lot of people think Oklahoma will have a very good year this year. Brett Venable got over the hump. He had a very bad first year, but that roster was better than 6 and 7. Team to watch out for, in my mind, 17. Couple teams from the Big 12. Kansas State, very well coached. Very well coached. They lose their starting quarterback in Will Howard, who goes to Ohio State, but very well coached by Chris Kleiman. And Mike Gundy's one of my guys. Oklahoma State brings back the best runner in the country, one of the best defenses in the country. Oklahoma State is a team to watch out for at 18, underrated. Miami, I'm going to say overrated at 19. Sorry. Until they prove something to me, I'm a fan. I'm a fan by marriage, but I'm a fan. And I've watched this program very closely since 2015. And this team can year after year disappoints. Texas A&M, new coach. Formerly coached the defense for Texas A&M under Jimbo Fisher. I guess I'm all right them to be in number 20. This is a team that could jump up and surprise and be a surprise entry from the SEC as well. You got Arizona, who lost a ton. A lot of players followed Jed Finch to Washington. They did promote the offensive. I'm sure they promoted the offensive coordinator, I believe. Trying to remember now who they brought in there. Hang on one second. Who am I looking for? Arizona. Brett Brennan. He was the head coach at San Jose State. Previously, he had been part of the Arizona attack. So again, good coaching move. Arizona made great strides under Jed Finch. Will they be able to continue that with him gone to Washington? North Carolina State, dark horse, great quarterback. Quarterbacks can take your team a long way in college football. USC, big disappointments, obviously, last year, probably the last 2 years, but more so last year under Lincoln Riley. They've got to do something to improve that defense. They focused on it in recruiting and transfer portal. They've got to replace former Heisman Trophy winner Caleb Williams, who, I'm sorry, Mac, will be a great player in the NFL. Maybe not this year, and maybe he'll get to Crow for a year. I don't know. He'll be a good player. He maybe won't be the best player ever drafted, but he will not be the biggest bust of all time. USC, Kansas, again, another big surprise. The Big 12, you got Kansas and you got Iowa 25, by the way. And, that might be the number of points they score the first 5 games. But Kansas, that Big 12 has got 7 teams probably that could finish anywhere from 1 to 7 in whatever order you want. I mean, that's just my opinion, but if I look at that, I mean, you look at these teams, I think We're going to look at the Big 12 real quick. Bear with me. Big 12. Arizona could finish in the top 7 or at the top, depending on how they bounce back. Baylor. Dave Aranda's under a lot of pressure there. Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Utah, West Virginia. Those teams could all win this conference in my mind. And then you could have a dark horse, Houston. Even TCU could potentially rebound this year. I don't foresee it, but it could happen. Get to some comments before we go here. Penn State overrated as well. Low 20s, I agree. Again, James Franklin has got to find a way to actually beat a good team. Knowles for CA. I think that's an endorsement. Bro, it's another one. Let's see. That's 3 things tonight. So I said bro, but I was prompted to. Bro, dude, and the bomb. The 3 things I've never said in my entire life, probably. How old am I? Miami is in the top 25? No. Now, again, they've had a great... Listen, nobody has a better NIL program than... And again, I have to embrace these things. You know how I feel about them? I've decided to get... I can't be Dabo Sweeney, I guess. I've got to embrace the reality of today's college football. Amateurism is gone. I can pay players to come to my school. Just pay them. Here you go. No NIL, no anything. Then we got the NIL reality. We got the transfer portal. It is what it is. We got realignment. I can either live with this or I can just move on and watch flag football with James. Just kidding, buddy. And I'll watch the games. And as long as I see the energy level on Saturday being better than Sunday, which I've said forever, I'll be okay. I'll figure it out. I'll come to grips with the new reality and hope that as we go forward and these conferences have to get bigger and bigger, that we also are able to, while traditional conferences may go away, maybe traditional rivalries will return or be able to be continued, as it were, when we have to have more regional. Once you have one big conference with 40 plus teams, you're going to have to play regional football. You're not going to, it's not going to be like it is now. The Big Ten stretches from Los Angeles to East Rutherford, New Jersey. No, again, with Miami, I agree. And by the way, this is a key year for the ACC. And what's going to happen to the ACC? We'll talk to Larry Sorensen soon. I think I'm going to try to get Larry on a Friday 101 show, actually, because there's a lot of stuff I want to talk to him about in baseball and college football. But he'll be on this show as well. I don't know if the ACC is going to be able to sustain that league if, in fact, Florida State and Clemson find a way out. Just don't see it. Now, the rest of them will get poached. The Big Ten wants to go further south. They'll be after Miami. They'll be after North Carolina. The SEC could very well be after Clemson and Florida State, probably specifically. I don't think either one of those schools fit academically with the Big Ten, but Carolina does. Miami does. Miami doesn't. A lot of people don't realize this because they think of Miami and they think of thugs and players getting arrested and great football teams and now overrated football teams. Miami's one of the best colleges in the country from an education standpoint. People lose track of that. These are still institutions of higher learning even if these guys are paid professional athletes now. LSU does have something to prove, but don't sleep on Nussmeier. Here's the whole thing, and that's a key. And we never know. Well, we know with Georgia. We expect Georgia. We hear the names. We know that they're deep at every position, but they've earned the right to. We've earned the right. There goes the governor overhead, and she goes overhead in a helicopter. I swear to God, every night. She's either stalking me, or she's having dinner in Saratoga and going back to the mansion. Sorry, I just delved into the Sunday stream of consciousness here. Back to what I was talking about. What was I talking about? Oh, reloading. When you get to Alabama and you're Nick Saban, he's gone now. So now there's something to prove as far as reloading versus rebuilding. Georgia's earned the right to say they're reloading. I think LSU still has to show us that. And I think you're saying that at the same time here, James. But, certain programs, certainly at specific times, find themselves where they're very easy to pick to reload and be good every year. Every year, they're going to be good. They're not always going to dominate, but they're always going to be good, and they're always going to be in contention in their conference, and certainly now for a playoff when we're talking about 12 teams. Georgia's earned their way there. Texas, not yet. Ohio State has. We'll find out about Michigan. But to me, there's only a couple teams. Georgia is at the top of the pack when it comes to reloading versus rebuilding right now. Rick's got a great question. Where's Colorado? Colorado's back in the Big 12. And I'm going to tell you that this team, let's see, did they get any votes? Colorado got 2 votes in their rankings. So when I go to other teams getting votes, if there's a team, you tell me if there's a team here. I've gone through the top 25, right? Iowa, and I'll give you the last 5 just so we can talk about teams that maybe can sneak in there. Arizona's at 21, NC State at 22, who I think could be higher, NC State. USC, I'm probably going to be a minority to think that Lincoln Riley might surprise because expectations are so low. Only because expectations are so low. Kansas at 24, Iowa at 25. Here's some of the teams that got votes, the next highest votes. And Washington just missed the top 25. I think Washington is in a lot of trouble this year. And I'll tell you where I think Colorado will finish in a second, Rick. I think Washington, Jed Finn's a great coach, but the cupboards are bare. I believe out of 22 starters last year, 20 of them are gone. Now, he did bring some guys from Arizona with him. I believe he had a decent transfer, a spring transfer portal. It's going to be very tough for Washington their first year in the Big Ten, just my opinion. Louisville, great year last year. Abraham is a great coach. I expect them to contend in the ACC. But again, the ACC winner might need to. The ACC could only get one team in. It's possible. Virginia Tech, SMU, team to watch out for amongst the group of 5s. Highest rated group of 5 team is right now, which is another thing you keep an eye on, right? Who are the group of 5 teams to watch out for the playoff? SMU is one of them. Memphis is right behind them. Boise State, very good. Watch out for the Mountain West. We always look at the AAC, which is a really good league. And by the way, how cool is this? Army, who I love. They've been independent for ever. Jeff Moncton, one of my favorite coaches in the country. They're now playing in the AAC. If this team plays it, and they've struggled a bit the last couple of years, but if they get back to the level they were at 3 years ago, 4 years ago, it's not inconceivable. You could see Army in the playoff. Just saying. Not inconceivable. They're not ranked here. So, again, I'm just saying. Auburn, another SEC team. West Virginia, we already talked about. Wisconsin, great point. Very disappointing last year. Big changes in the Big Ten. Fickle could be under a little pressure. Didn't really perform that well the last 2 years. Liberty at 15. Again, a team to watch out for that Group of 5 pick. Iowa State, Kentucky, Florida. No, Florida shouldn't get any votes in my mind. I think Florida's in big trouble. They got a gauntlet of a schedule. Billy Napier is maybe the coach on the hottest seat next to Ryan Day. Maybe hotter. South Carolina lost their starting quarterback. We'll see. I love the head coach. North Carolina, UNLV, Maryland, Texas Tech, UCF, UTSA, another team I like in the AAC, Tulane, Appalachian State, Texas State. Nebraska gets 2 votes. Nebraska, if there's a sleeper in the Big Ten, it might be Nebraska. I love Matt Rule. I think he's a great coach. I think he's starting to get that program headed in the right direction. Now it's time to start winning some games. Colorado gets 2 votes. Troy gets 1 vote. Air Force. James Madison. Great year last year, James Madison. Can they repeat? Good question. Miami, Ohio, and Syracuse gets a vote. Now, as far as Colorado goes, and we'll take a look at some of these Group of 5 teams as well. As far as Syracuse go, I'm not Syracuse, sorry. Colorado goes, let's look at their schedule right now, because this will be the first team, this year we look at the schedule. North Dakota State, they're going to win, but I don't think that's a pushover. Okay. They're at Nebraska. That's a loss. They're at Colorado State. I'll be kind. It's a win. Baylor. Dave Aranda's got to have a good year this year. Baylor's not going to be a pushover. Colorado gets it at home. I think they lose to Baylor. They go to UCF. I think they lose to UCF. Kansas State's going to beat them. They're at Arizona. That's a loss. They'll beat Cincinnati. I'll give my win at Texas Tech. They're going to lose to Utah. They're going to lose to Kansas, and they're going to lose to Oklahoma State. They're 4-8 again. Now, maybe they can slide a victory in against, say, Baylor, get some 5. Maybe they beat UCF, get some 6. 6-6 to me is high water. High water for Colorado. Just my opinion. The curious case of Benjamin Button. So if I remember, Benjamin Button started out as an old man and became a baby, right? He passed away as a baby. So I don't know if that's a good thing. I guess I'd like to go backwards just a little ways. I actually like my 60s, quite frankly. I'd like to be a little healthier, which we all would. Rick, hope you're doing better, by the way. But I like my 60s. I really do. Wake had 2 players on a Mohawks championship team. Talking about Wake Forest baseball team, by the way, which we can dive into it, Larry, a little bit. The Mohawks with a great they fit this show a little bit because, again, it's a summer college league. I don't remember. Is it a wooden bat league, Rick? I've asked this question several times, and I don't know if I get an answer or I just forget because I'm old. But it's really good baseball, guys. Really good baseball. You ever get a chance to watch any of it, wherever you are? They have a few of these leagues around the country. So wherever you are, you can see some good baseball if you're watching some of these college summer leagues. Colorado has 2 more years. Recruiting is better, but they don't have enough to compete this year. They don't. And by the way, Dion has said, as far as I know, Dion has yet, he's got recruiting, coaches that recruit. I get that. As far as I know, Dion has yet to step into a recruit's living room. And you can't sustain, well, again, they haven't had success, but you can't build any kind of consistent success through the transfer portal. It's just not going to work. And I think, again, 6-6 is a high water mark for them. 4-8 is where I got them right now. Chris is with us. Notre Dame's Riley Leonard looking to make a big comeback this season. I mentioned, if you joined us a little bit late, Chris, I've been talking up Riley Leonard pretty much the entire show. I've got Notre Dame as a top 5 team. Riley Leonard, a huge part of that. If Riley Leonard stays healthy, Notre Dame is a national championship contender. That's simple. If he gets hurt, again, there'll be problems. But they've improved the skill position players around him. The offensive line might be a little bit of a work in progress with Alt gone and a couple other players gone, but I think this team will be solidly in the playoff and be a legitimate contender with Riley Leonard. Big fan. By the way, I saw you wished a happy birthday to Bob Lee earlier, and no, it didn't get up, but I'll call out Bob Lee because Bob Lee was a pretty good college player at Arizona State, I believe. And then played quite a few years in the NFL with the Vikings and the Falcons. Not sure, might have played some, maybe the Rams. But pretty good quarterback in his day. And I believe, what'd you say, 82 today, I think you said, Chris? I don't remember. So happy birthday, Bob Lee. And he does fit. I've been looking for that movie. I've got it written down here now. I don't remember. Mike Bass was my guest last week on 101 with Keith Engle, former Washington Redskin cornerback and a great cornerback in college with Michigan. We had a great conversation. Mike, he's going to be 80 years old. He looks better than me. We had a great conversation, but he talked about this movie that his teammate talked him into getting into. Now I don't remember the name, Rick. I've got it written down here somewhere, but I don't have it right in front of me. And I was looking for it on YouTube. I couldn't find it. And I'll continue to look for it, though. The Corn Chuckers early. They play them in week 2, CA, and I've got that as a huge loss for Colorado. Kansas State probably wins the conference. I can see that. I can see any one of a number of other scenarios as well. Because as we just talked about, hang on one second. Got to get back to the conferences here. I'm going to say Arizona State can't win. Arizona probably can't win. BYU, don't sleep on BYU. It's about time for them to rise up. They don't have, you normally have a lot of consecutive bad to Brigham Young. But I'm not counting them as one of the teams. I'm counting Iowa State, Kansas State. I think Kansas State and Oklahoma State are the 2 favorites to your point, CA. So what did I say? Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Utah, West Virginia, and I'm going to say BYU, all with a chance to win that. And you might even have, Baylor could come back. Dave Aranda's got to have a big season probably to save his job. Houston could bounce back a little bit. Any one of those teams can win this conference, and anyone could finish 7th or 8th. So I think it's a really great. I'm sorry, not a great. It's a very competitive conference. It's not a great conference. It's nowhere near the level of the Big Ten or the SEC. May not even be at the level of the ACC. I'm not sure. At the top. But I like Mike Gundy. I'm a big Mike Gundy fan, and I'll take Oklahoma State here. Wooden bat. I love wooden bat games. I hate more. I love college baseball. I watch a lot of college baseball. I hate that ping. But I hate more than a ping of a metal bat or whatever they may come out of now. I don't know. Y'all need to watch Vision Quest this weekend. Great movie. Wrong show. Bring it up Sunday. What are we talking about? I'm not getting into Vision Quest tonight. Am I, CA? Now you got me looking for it. I want to turn Wednesday into that. Vision Quest. It was made in 1985. Check it out. See, Utah's my pick. First year in. You just picked the Kansas State. You can only pick one team to win. No hedging. I mean, I hedged a little bit. I said there are 7 teams that could win this conference, and I really believe that. But I'll pick Oklahoma State. Who's in a hot seat? What coaches? I can tell you, here's a list of coaches I have. Stan Pittman at Arkansas. Arkansas. Got off to a great start a couple of years ago, but he's lucky he saved his job this year. He's going to have to get off to a good start. Dave Aranda, we mentioned already, from Baylor. Billy Napier, maybe number 1. Stan Drayton at Temple, I know, is in trouble. Joe Moorhead at Akron. But look at some other coaches. I'm just looking at some. That's not going to help me. Where's my normal? I usually have a very good site I use for this. Now I can't find it. I have to find it again. But Ryan Day. Ryan Day has had one of the best records in college football since he's been the head coach. But he's lost too many times to Michigan, and he's failed too many times in big games. Now, he's certainly better than Ron Franklin. James Franklin, sorry. Ron Franklin. Ron Franklin was a sportscaster for somebody. Let's see. Who else is... see what some of these other people bring up. Billy Napier, we've already talked about. Sam Pittman, we talked about. Aranda. Chip Kelly. Sorry, gone. That's supposed to be an old article. Pat Narduzzi at Pittsburgh, another good pick. Ryan Day, we talked about. A team I like to rebound this year. Kalini Sitake from BYU. A great coach. Needs to have a good year this year. They've been down the last couple of years, and it's time for them to get things going. Now as a member of the Big 12. I think it's their second year in the Big 12. They get to play against their longtime rival in the Holy War game, in a conference game now, the Utah Utes. I would think, by the way, that Mac Brown is probably on a bit of a hot seat on North Carolina, too. Might leave of his own volition. I mean, the man's got to be freaking 80 years old, for crying out loud. So those are some of the coaches. If you got some other guys you think are in trouble, that's fine. You can bring them up. I want to look at this early schedule, too. UFL and the XFL and the United are now combined. I don't follow any of those leagues. Tons of players, I guess you're saying, picked from that league for the NFL. My point is, it's nothing to sneeze at for a college player to go into that league, the UFL. Listen, there are lots of opportunities. By the way, any college player worth his salt, Chris, is going to make more money staying in college than he's going to make in the UFL. I'm just saying. These leagues never pan out. The USFL years ago had a chance, and then they wanted to move to the fall and put themselves out of business. And watch the ESPN documentary, Who Killed the USFL? And you'll find out it's one of the presidential candidates. The other story. Thank you, Rick. I knew Ron Franklin was a broadcaster. He did college football, college basketball, too, I think. Dylan Gabriel wins a Heisman. I think Dylan Gabriel is right now the betting favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. I like him. I like him a lot myself. He also has put a few bucks in his pocket already. Speaking of guys who I got to find a place where I can look at the Heisman Trophy because most of them are betting odds and I can't get there. Yeah, I think we can go here. So the favorites right now are, if I'm not mistaken, this might be old. They've got Carson Beck, number 1. I think Dylan Gabriel is now the betting favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. And Carson Beck has fallen to second. Will Howard. So right now, and I'll give you these odds. And I think these were from, maybe these are new. I don't know. Let me see. This is from February 13th. So I know they've changed since then, but we'll give you the betting odds at this point in time. Quinn Ewers, plus 750. Carson Beck, plus 750. So what that means is you bet $100, you win $750. I believe Dylan Gabriel has moved ahead of both of them right now. He is plus 1,000 at this point. Will Howard is plus 1,000. Jalen Milroe, plus 1,200. There's a guy that don't sleep on. He improved tons last year. If he improves his accuracy, he's going to be a very tough player, and Alabama's going to need him to be very good. And if he improves to the point where he's in the top 3 in the Heisman Trophy, well, Kalen DeBoer now potentially does have a playoff team at Alabama. And also maybe the one of the most fun names to say, Nico Imaliva, plus 1,500. He's the new Tennessee quarterback replacing Joe Milton, who's having a good camp for the Patriots, by the way. Jackson Dart, plus 1,800. I mentioned him at Mississippi. He's entering his 3rd year now as a starter there. He completed a career percent of his passes last year. Nussmeier, who I believe James mentioned earlier, is plus 1,800. These numbers could have changed a little bit since February, but I doubt a lot. James just looked up Mike Bass, and in 100 games, he had 30 interceptions and had an All-Pro nod. He also scored the only TD in Super Bowl 7. He is in their hall. He's in the Redskins Hall of Fame. James. Yeah. His career was fairly short. He had to retire, I want to say, after like 7 years. He had a neck injury. Played every game until he hurt his neck for, I guess, want to say 7 straight years in Washington. He was drafted originally by Green Bay, played in Detroit where he grew up, was on the taxi squad most of the time, played a couple of games. Then when he got traded got traded to Washington and played 1 year for the great Vince Lombardi before he passed away. And is that play, James, I know you're a little younger than me. If you want to look up this play, it's one of the most famous plays in Super Bowl history because Gary Yepremian, there was a botched field goal. It was the year the Dolphins went undefeated. The Redskins were favored in that game, by the way, even though the Dolphins were undefeated. There's a botched field goal attempt by the Dolphins, and Yepremian tried to throw the football, and it just slipped out of his hands. Mike Bass picks it up and runs for a touchdown. And to keep this on the college, should he belong in the Hall of Fame? Probably not. Really good, hard-nosed player and the kind of guy you'd want on your team, but I don't know that Mike would disagree. He's in the college. He's in the Ring of Honor, if that's what they call it. They call it the Hall of Fame, I think, in Washington. He's been honored by the Wolverines, and he was a good college player. And I will tell you, if you watched the interview or didn't, Mike Bass. I met Mike Bass in 1983 when he was running a little bar in Freeport, Bahamas, right across the street from a Holiday Inn that we stayed in on the beach. And we went there a lot. It was like a little tiki bar. Mike 10 bar, and might be his wife. I don't know. This young girl working with him, might be his wife. But it was a cool place. I joked with him that I learned to swear from Mike Bass. So I was 23 years old. And he was a colorful guy then, man. He's a bright guy, a lot of fun. He did a lot of swearing. We joked around a lot. And it was a place where, they didn't have like 4 choices of beers. And they make some blender cocktails, if you will. But if you want something to eat, you cooked it yourself on the grill he had just outside the tiki bar. It was a lot of fun. All very good is right. Mike Bass, class guy, never missed a game until he got hurt. I want to say 8, 7. I was going to look it up since we're talking about Mike. And he does have some football. He does have some college football relevance here. Hold on. I don't have all my notes. I probably got rid of my notes from Mike for now. But he played every game, and they were playing 14-game seasons there from 1969 to 1975. Every game. Started every game. 1, 2, 3, 7 seasons. Too short. Impressive. 30 interceptions, yes. He had a career high 8 interceptions in 1971, and he was a second-team All-Pro, as James mentioned, in 1974. But we had a great conversation with Mike about he played on both levels. He played in 2 of the greatest rivalries of the era, the 70s, 60s, and 70s. And actually longer than that with Michigan, Ohio State. And then he went to the pros, and he was a part of the Redskins Cowboys rivalry, which was at that point about as heated as the Ohio State Michigan rivalry. I was counting his season. I didn't count his season with Detroit. I was counting his 7 seasons with Washington. He played 2 games. I think mostly as a special teamer in Detroit in 1967. So I wasn't counting that one, Rick, my bad. But you're right. Google said 8 seasons. Let's see. What else you guys want to chat about today? We talked about Michigan. We talked about coaches on the hot seat. We'll dive more into the schedule. We'll talk about the schedule too a little bit right now. We're going to wrap it up here in just a couple minutes. Been a good night, fun night. Just going to get back in the saddle. Takes a little time to get used to things and get the names rattling out there again. I think we'll take a quick look at the schedule next week. We'll be getting a week closer. Right now, we're 17 days away from week 0, which I will tell you is not without some interest. I will go that far. I know there's some big matchups, Clemson and Georgia in the real week 1. But week 0, we're going to get Florida State and Georgia Tech. I think it's going to be a key game. We'll just talk about that one game right now. There's only 4 games, and the other ones are, whatever. SMU Nevada might be a decent game, although SMU is a 26-point favorite right now. Florida State, Georgia Tech. Florida State's a 12-point favorite. Georgia Tech has made a lot of strides the last couple of years. They were terrible when they fired their coach in midseason. I'm going to try to find his name here for a second real quick. When they fired, can't remember who they had here. Who did they fire? Can't remember who they fired now. But anyway, now when they hired Key, who was the offensive coordinator, I want to say at the time, they played much better the end of that season. They played much better last year, and they were an improving team. The record may not show them as being one of the top teams in the ACC, but I mentioned the North Carolina State as a team to watch out for. I wouldn't sleep 100% on Georgia Tech either, and watch them in this game. I think it's going to be a key game. Now, it's not going to be a game I bet, I'm thinking, because I'm not quite sure how good Florida State is. I'm not sure I'm willing to lay 12 points to find out. I think Brett Key might get this team he might get this team fired up to make that a game, maybe even pull an upset in week 0. While I'm here, I wanted to look at Notre Dame at the head coach. Sorry, the offense coordinator. Am I wrong, James, in that Coach Kelly's offensive coordinator that he brought with him from Notre Dame went back to Notre Dame. Am I wrong there? Where is he? Mike Denbrook. Let's check him out. Mike Denbrook spent the last 2 years at LSU. So once in a while, I remember things. It's amazing. Georgia Tech played well against Georgia. Excellent point. Let me take a look. I'm gonna take a look right now and see if I think Georgia Tech has a chance to surprise some people in the ACC. Let's look at that real quick. We'll be talking about the next few weeks, right? Who to look for? Surprises. Let's look at the Yellow Jackets before we wrap it up tonight. This will be our last. You got a couple comments. Put them up. Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up after this. Florida State. I'm going to say loss. Georgia State, they'll win that one. Syracuse, I think they win. VMI, they're going to beat. At Louisville, probably a loss. I think they beat Duke. I think they beat North Carolina. They lose to Notre Dame. I think they beat Virginia Tech. I think they lose to Miami. I'm only going to say that because of a Hurricane fan. And beat North Carolina State. Lose to Georgia. I think that's 7 wins. 7-5. Not great. Not going to win the ACC, but, not bad. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up here tonight. Thanks for tuning in with me today. Remember, my guest on Friday with one-on-one with Keith Engle will be former Major League Baseball outfielder Brian McRae. Came up with the Royals, played for his dad, Hal, was a great Major League hitter, DH mostly, after a bad ankle injury. But we'll have Brian was a he was a good Major League outfielder for a long time. Played for a lot of teams. Played for the Royals, played for the Cubs, played for the Mets. Played for Toronto, as Chris pointed out to me. And we're going to be happy to have him on. And we'll be back with the Major League Baseball update and the Sunday stream on Sunday. You guys have a great week. We'll see you Friday morning with Brian McRae. Have a good night. Bye.